Hello, welcome to While You're Single TV, the channel for single adults who desire godly relationships. This is the final segment of this series, so let's finish up. Thanks for joining me on this series of how to get started in godly relationships. And just to do a quick recap, the first guideline is to have an entry strategy. The second is to have a couple's mindset. The third is to start from the right place, and that right place, of course, is God. And the fourth is to listen to God. And number 5 is derived again from point number 3, start from the right place, which is God. Point number 5 can be elaborated based on John chapter 1, verse 17. There, John writes that Moses brought the law, but Jesus brought grace and truth. So when the religious leaders were arguing with Jesus about divorce per se, they were coming from Moses' perspective and Jesus was coming from God's perspective. And the differences between their approaches is a picture of the religious leaders coming from a law's perspective, while Jesus coming from a grace perspective. In other words, rely on grace. Point number 5, rely on grace to not only get into a godly relationship, but to stay in a godly relationship. The law is about rules and regulations and requirements. And if you don't meet those rules, if you don't meet those regulations, if you don't meet those requirements, you are going to suffer loss. You are going to be punished for it, or you're going to miss out from something. But grace is God just being a blessing to you. Grace is favor. The law says you have to work it. You have to do this and do that to get something. If you don't do this and do that, you're going to miss out. But grace is God working on your behalf. The law is you working hard to please God. Grace is about what God did on your behalf. The law is about rules and regulations. If you don't date a million people, you will never get married. If you don't date online, you'll never get married. Don't date at all. Don't date at all. Just go into your room and pray 24/7. If you don't do that, you'll never get married. Rules and regulations. And if you don't follow those rules, if you don't follow those trends, if you don't spice up your profile, nothing's going to happen. But grace is not like that. Grace meets you where you are. Grace simplifies the process for you. Grace is God blessing you because he loves you. He cares for you. It does not mean that you're just going to sit down and do nothing. However, what you do is in alignment with God places in your heart, as opposed to you doing what everybody is doing, because everybody says if you don't do it this way, nothing's going to happen for you. Grace says you don't have to do all of that. Grace says, I know who you are. I know where you are. I know how you are. And based on your profile, this is how I want you to go about getting into a relationship. The law makes it very difficult for you. Grace simplifies the process. The law's approach into getting into a relationship is all about rules and regulations, all about trying to look a certain way, behave a certain way, dress a certain way, or barely dress a certain way so that you can get somebody. And grace says you don't have to do all of that. Grace says rely on God to help you out. Grace says trust God, rest and trust in God. Grace says, I will give you a tailor-made approach for you based on who you are, based on how you are. Grace simplifies the process for you. As a rule of thumb, if you're working too hard to get into a relationship, chances are that's not grace and that's not God helping you out. It's you trying to make it happen. You don't have to run around like a headless chicken trying to get hitched, because you might just get ditched. And that's not God's plan for you. I want to encourage you to trust God. It's good to look good. It's good to take good care of yourself and present yourself in the right way. It's an awesome thing when someone is attractive, handsome, beautiful. That's great. But I know there are a lot of handsome guys, a lot of beautiful women, a lot of well-to-do individuals who are not married yet, who've tried everything as far as spicing up their profile and looking good and doing their hair and trying to make something of themselves, thinking that's what's going to get them in a godly relationship. I'm talking about godly relationships. I'm not talking about just any kind of relationships. I'm not talking about a booty call. I'm not talking about one night stands. I'm talking about all life married stands. That's what I'm referring to. If that's what you want commitment, you want wholeness, you want joy, you want a solid marriage, I'm telling you that God's grace will help you achieve that. I'm saying while it's important to look good and be well groomed and be of good character and all that kind of good stuff, I'm telling you that the reason why you get the man or woman God has for you is because of God's favor and grace. He brings the person into your life and you can go on from there, as opposed to you falling over yourself and pounding the pavement and almost going insane in trying to find somebody. God can simplify the process for you, and that's the grace approach. And God is like saying, just trust me, I got this. You don't have to overwork yourself to get something that I can easily present to you. That's the grace approach. So rely on grace. So thank you for indulging me for this past few weeks. Once again, if you want to get started in godly relationships, number 1, have an entry strategy. Number 2, have a couple's mindset. Number 3, start from the right place. Number 4, listen to God. Number 5, rely on grace. Until next time, take care. Stay blessed.